So just want to formally welcome everybody to the webinar tonight. Tonight we are, with some really amazing people on the panel tonight, which I will introduce. We're gonna really be kind of focusing tonight on ketamine assisted therapy, and we have a first responder who's going to speak about his experience. We have a veteran here who's going to not only speak about his own experience, but share a wonderful documentary series episode tonight. We have a couple of practitioners in the house. We have Francesco and we have Todd as well. So we have a really, really great kind of panel tonight where we are going to explore the world of ketamine assisted therapy, its healing potential, some best practices that are kind of actually happening, kind of in our neck of the woods, both here in Ontario and also out in BC with Roots to Thrive. Um, and I mean, guys, we get to watch, a episode of Gordon Hurley's series here, Advanced Force Operations. It's a 30-minute episode that I'll have Gordon kind of introduce when we get to that point of the night, but we're really lucky kind of to have him here to kind of share that with us. So really, really excited for tonight. And just want to kind of open it up with some introductions. I'm gonna just say myself, I'm a PAC board member, Melanie Dignam, a psychotherapist here in Toronto, working with ketamine assisted therapy with my clients in private practice, but also doing some psilocybin and MDMA assisted therapy through the Special Access Program with Health Canada and kind of deep dive into some clinical trials with CAMH right now with psilocybin. So I've been kind of dancing around the space for a number of years and joined the board to kind of just participate in things like tonight. So I'm really, really looking forward to this. I'm going to turn it over to they're all guys. So I'm going to have each one of these guys kind of do a brief introduction of themselves, and then we're going to dive right in. Okay. So I'm going to start with Justin. Justin Law, if you want to give yourself, a little unmute there, and yeah, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, my name is Justin Law. I currently live in Kelowna, BC. Um, I was a paramedic, then a firefighter for 30 years. I started back in 1991 in a small town in the interior as a paramedic, and then went into the fire service later on in my career, and I was in my mid 30s. Um, Most of my working time was in the Lower Mainland, like working Squamish, Lions Bay, Howe Sound, Metro Vancouver, and then finished my time in Langley, in Township of Langley with the fire service there. And now I live in Kelowna.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for being here tonight, Justin. Looking forward to hearing, your share and what you have to, your wisdom that you're going to share with the group tonight. I'm going to throw it over to Gordon if you want to introduce yourself and let us know what you're up to these days.
Sure. What's up, guys? I'm Gordo. I spent 15 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. I got out in 2021. I went back to school for graphic design. They say graphic design is the mother of arts. And as I found out, I keep squirreling down different paths and trying out different parts of art, which is probably another conversation about therapy. But I've had a big advocacy lens and pursuit within my heart for legal and safe psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. And I've been navigating it now for about 2.5, 3 years. And it got to a point where I thought that the government engagement is good, but I can't put all my eggs in one basket and think that I'm going to achieve something with a big machine. And so and I have leveraged social media just to level the landscape with communication. And then grassroots raised all the money, brought special forces guys to go get ketamine assisted psychotherapy, then raised more money, got it professionally created into a documentary, which I then premiered at the Ottawa War Museum about a month and a half ago.
Mm.
I have my second episode. I am taking 5 Canadian female veterans down to Mexico to get Ibogaine and 5-MeO. So it's a 5-part series, and where you've only done one. So second one's coming. I'm Gordo.
Gordo. Thanks, Gordo. Awesome. Can't wait to see that tonight. Okay, Francesco, which was one of our practitioners tonight. If you want to just introduce yourself there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Francesco. I also go by Chesco. I'm a registered psychotherapist and a Canadian certified counselor. I'm right now practicing in Pickering, Ontario, just a little bit east of Toronto, not too far. During this time, I'm also researching. So I'm researching for MAPS Canada, Heroic Hearts Canada, Sendo Project, and Project Trauma Support in regards to Canadian drug policy, psychedelics for Canadian combat veterans, and in addition to that, doing a new study just on ketamine assisted couples therapy for veterans and first responders. So there's quite a bit of empirical research aspect that I do bring into my practice as well. In addition to that, also practicing ketamine assisted therapy and just trying to help people attain their greatest versions through these practices.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for being here tonight. Can't wait to hear your perspective. Todd, I'm going to throw it over to you for a bit of an introduction there.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. As you can see on the screen, my name's Todd Haspect. My father's Fred Brinson of Kalapu, Mi'kmaq First Nation. My mother's Francine Haspect. She's French and Danish ancestry, and I carry her name with intention, and it's an important part of my story that I'll speak to a little bit more later. I have the privilege tonight of being here to represent and discuss my work with Roots to Thrive Society for Psychedelic Therapy out here on Vancouver Island. We're working on the traditional unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. I'm living on the traditional unceded territory of the Quetzin people. And because I'm going to be speaking soon, I don't know how much of an intro I'm going to give quite yet. I'll get into it a
Yeah.
little bit more when I share about Roots to Thrive. It'll thread together a bit more smoothly.
Okay, beautiful. Thanks, Todd. Okay, so yeah, just a bit of what the structure is for tonight, just to give everybody a sense. We will be starting with Todd. Actually, he's going to be speaking about ketamine, ketamine assisted therapy, and the Roots to Thrive program out there, sharing his best practices and some of the amazing things that they're doing out there. Then we're gonna take some questions. So if you do have questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll save them to the end. But I'll definitely make sure that they get asked, and we'll share that with Todd in the actual time we have for questions. Then we're going to move into viewing the documentary series. We'll get Gordon to do just a bit of an overview, introduction, and then we're going to get right into it. We're going to have some time for questions afterwards and have some reflections from the panel themselves. And then the final part of the night is going to be a panel discussion with everybody on the panel. We're going to be talking about experiences with ketamine assisted therapy, both personal experiences and professional. We do have a couple of questions set up for that period, but definitely really want to hear from you guys to try to make this more of a conversation. So please, any questions that come up along the way, just throw them in the chat and we'll be sure to ask those. Okay. We are here for 2 hours. So, just get yourself nice and cozy and get a drink and kind of sit in. And let's just get started. Let's throw it over to you, Todd, to kind of give us that overview of ketamine and its therapy and also the Roots to Thrive program.
Yeah. Thanks again. Here I am again. So I did notice, and I was a little confused. I thought for a moment that we were actually here for a panel discussion on men's beard grooming when I looked at our panelists, but I had to double check and get a different presentation together here. So I'd like to frame and contextualize a little bit more of really sharing our work at Roots to Thrive and the work that we do with ketamine assisted therapy. It's a model that I deeply believe in. I believe it's an excellent model, and you're not going to hear from me that I think it's the best model in the world. We're not here for perfection. We're here for excellence, and I can confidently speak that the model that we're continually evolving over here on Vancouver Island is an excellent model. So, back in early 2020, there was a group formed primarily out of Vancouver Island University, spearheaded by Dr. Shannon Dames and her research around emotional resilience. And she received a grant that created the opportunity to run a pilot project that was for group specific psychedelic assisted therapy. And because of regulations and limitations at the time, the project was built around working with ketamine, specifically IM, so intramuscular ketamine. And the ketamine at that time was really seen kind of like here's a placeholder. Let's see how this model works. Let's see how this works in the group model. But we're going to build something so eventually when we have access to other medicines, we can apply the other medicines. Our perspective on that has shifted somewhat since then. At that time in 2020, I had been working for a large health organization, and so this bit some important framing, to me, it's important framing in there. So my work in this field started in 1998 as a peer support worker on the Lower East Side of Vancouver, and progressed over time to eventually moving into working with different programs, completing my education and my designation as a registered clinical counselor, um, primarily focusing on that point in time with the healthcare system in treating what was being called peak trauma. And there weren't a lot of folks doing it in the mainstream healthcare system. And along those same lines, around that same time, I was diagnosed with PTSD myself. And the one thing that I will always carry with me is this reminder of the psychiatrist who who sh offered the diagnosis, looked me in the eye and he said, "Don't tell anyone that you're carrying this diagnosis. It will kill your career." Fast forward to, I guess we're going to say 2016. I burnt out hard, real hard, and it wasn't my first time. I chose at that time to take some time away from working as a therapist and had moved into education, primarily around trauma-informed practice, cultural safety, substance use disorder kind of training, that kind of thing. And that's how I got called into Roots to Thrive in early 2020 to help frame up and design this program. Now, the program was initially designed in the pilot period because of the grant that we were going to be offering services in this pilot to healthcare providers that were being impacted by primarily PTSD, treatment-resistant depression, and generalized anxiety disorder. Um, and as I got to know the team, and the team formed in that way, the cat was out of the bag that I'd been living with PTSD, and it became pretty obvious because of some of the symptoms and how they were impacting me. And I was offered a spot to be a participant in the initial cohort. Um, by the end of the 12-week program, I no longer met the criteria for PTSD. And I had felt this purposeful calling to reassert my designation and work as a therapist again. And since then, I've been working as a senior facilitator for Roots to Thrive. And it's been a deep honor and a privilege. I get to wake up every day and do something I absolutely love. And I want to be really clear that I was probably one of the biggest doubters of a few points of our model up front. Are you serious? We're going to do group work? I really turned my nose up at the idea of group work. I turned my nose up at the idea of ketamine. Like, seriously, we're going to go in a group, we're going to get in a room, we're going to get in a room together and we're going to K-hole? Like, come on. And so I'm coming from this place of belief and really love for the work that I get to do, having come from a place as a doubter. So, what is Roots to Thrive? What are we offering in relation to ketamine assisted therapy? We're primarily known for our group model, our 12-week group program. We also do offer individual work, working also with MDMA and psilocybin. And over the years, we've also worked with psilocybin in group context. But our primary offering that continues with the most uptake is our Roots to Thrive 12-week program, the 12-week community of practice. And the 12-week community of practice offers within that context 3 group ketamine assisted therapy sessions. It's important up front that we note to participants all through the intake process and early on, we actually don't frame this program as a therapy program. We frame this program as a resiliency developing program. Participants in each week come together virtually in a community of practice where we start in a large group where all participants are in a large group together, sometimes upwards of 50, 60 participants in one place. And there's a shared experience, what many of you would call a psychoeducational component, that can range from offering some theory and understanding of how medicine might work, of therapeutic processes, but really specifically focusing on different types of emotional regulation strategies and tools and opportunities to practice those. And then after that first hour, the group is separated into small groups. And these small groups are going to be together throughout the entire journey together, including on their medicine sessions. The largest a small group will ever be will be 8 participants, and they can range to be down to as few as 5 in there. And so, and I get asked often by folks that are coming into, they're curious about this program, like, what does community of practice even mean? Well, we have countless examples of what effective community of practices can be in our day-to-day life. We just don't necessarily see them that way. So I come from a martial arts background. I've trained all sorts of martial arts, primarily Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I can frame up the example if we come together in a large class, the black belts in the room demonstrate technique. We get to ask questions, we get examples, and then we go into smaller groups or even pairings, and we get to practice those strategies, fumble through it in real time, and then look for strategies to integrate it and make it our own. It might be a painting class or a music class. Not a lot of group music classes these days, but it is an example. So an art class maybe where people come together in a large group, a technique is shown, and then they break into their smaller individual pairings and work on these strategies. So this model is really based off that idea if this really is about practice. And we offer a very predictable structure, and that is very intentional. We have learned that the more predictable a structure can be, the more freedom and safety that there can be with engagement in the therapeutics process. And so participants will receive every week, they receive an outline of what to expect of what the weekly community of practice is going to look like, and they're gonna have an example of what the prompts, the question prompts that we will speak to in the small groups. Once we're in small groups in the facilitated model, every participant has an opportunity to practice, respond to that prompt. And on week one, it's very open-ended. It's very open. So what brought you on this journey? And then over the weeks, the prompts get much and more specific and much more in line to what we might be working on. Week two might sound like something like, what are your fears and what are your hopes around ketamine assisted therapy? So, and they're shared from a place of where we welcome honesty and authenticity. There's no need to be perfect. Our famous words in Roots to Thrive are just show up exactly as you are. And participants are shared a model known as compassionate witnessing as a way to respond to each other from a place of listening, from a place of, I hear you, I see you, you matter. This is how I felt. This is how I resonate with what you share versus the maybe fixing or, that happened to me too, that kind of thing. A piece that we learned too is significantly different and it's consistently reflected back to us by our participants that it matters is that us as facilitators, we're engaged in the model just as much as the participants are. So I have the opportunity. So when I respond to a prompt any given night, I'm responding from a place of authenticity. And this has become extremely intentional because for the first several weeks, the facilitators always share first to really role model and show how that vulnerability can be safe in that space. The first 4 weeks are crucial. The first 4 weeks are really those deeply meaningful preparation weeks for the first ketamine session. They're really focused on getting to know each other, building and strengthening a container in a way that can help people prepare and feel safe in the container that we've co-created before we meet in person for the medicine session in particular. And I got to say, the way that our intake team even starts to set people up, I've seen the evolution over the last 5 years to be quite dramatic. We're now at a point where I'm consistently blown away by week one, these group of strangers come together. And I'm looking at Justin because Justin, we were all on this ride together at one point. Week one, 8 firefighters, most of whom have never met each other, and they're sharing as if they're old friends. They're sharing from an absolutely honest, heartfelt, painful place in a way that is pretty rare to witness in other spaces, especially when it's a group of men. I'm going to name that as being really important. And so by the time we meet in person for the first time, it's like old friends coming together, the way they come together. We focus so much on set and setting. Um, we hear that all the time, right? Set and setting. This is all language that's familiar to everyone in this room. We never stop refining what that means. So the basic layout is we have rooms set up that have individual mattresses with a backrest, weighted blankets, eye covers, headphones. There's also a speaker in the room that plays the music and ceremony. So this is where ceremony and Western medicine really can meet and merge in a beautiful way. And I had an elder recently really get really clear with me with this definition of ceremony as a ceremony is an invitation into presence. And this is really like this core ethos behind how we create not just our virtual settings, but how we meet in person, is this invitation into presence, into grounding, and into co-creating and holding together what this can look like. So when people come into the center for the first time, they're brought into the room to drop off their things. It's a very, very quiet room. It's a very clear transition. There's a threshold that gets crossed from the hallway where you might have been getting your blood pressure checked. You might have had a dosing conversation with Dr. Pam or Dr. Barb, who I can see Barb is on the call here today listening. And then transitioning into ceremony, into that ceremony space. There's music playing, the lighting's extremely intentional, the decorations are extremely intentional in that way. And then we move into ceremony, and there are several rounds of our ceremony before the medicine even enters the room. We focus on repeating logistics over and over again. A great deal of our ceremony is intentionally repetitive because in states of activation, nervousness, newness, these things get missed, they get lost. Again, predictability helps create safety in that way. And then the ceremony moves into a great deal of shared grounding experiences, breathwork experiences. Often we have some poetry that's shared, very consistent before participants have an opportunity to, to speak to their pillars of strength, to speak to any support requests or boundaries they might have. This is a really important part of our process. This is verbalized, clarified as much as possible each time. And then, of course, verbalizing their intentions for the medicine session. Once we move through that piece, the medicine comes in, the medicine is administered, and the playlist starts. Now, our playlists are very intentionally, carefully curated 2-hour playlists that parallel the trajectory of an IM ketamine session with a very slow build, intentional opening music during the peak, and then very intentional music that titrates between different levels of intensity on the tail of the session. And at the 2-hour mark, headphones are removed. If folks aren't already out of the medicine, there's a gentle transition and integration starts right there in real person in a circle where the participants hold each other in a really, really good, powerful way. And there's a bunch of other logistical pieces about getting people out the door safely, make sure no one's driving. And then following the medicine sessions, which always happen on the weekend, we have additional group integration specific sessions virtually that are offered on the following Mondays, where they're a mix of folks from all the other small groups in the Roots to Thrive program. And then we're back together on Tuesday for our weekly community of practice. We've had different spacing over time in between the medicine sessions. At one point, we did the first 2 ketamine sessions 1 week after each other. Now we have 2 weeks or 2 weeks in between the medicine sessions. We've learned that spacing for really meaningful integration has been really helpful. I feel like I'm missing so much when we're in these settings. I never really know how much to share or what to leave out. So I'm glad we're going to have a Q&A period if some questions are coming up. Yeah, by the end of the 12 weeks, the goodbyes are tough. They're really tough. It's very consistent that folks are feeling like they're not ready to go quite yet. And in a tongue-in-cheek way, we often say at Roots to Thrive, people come for the psychedelics and they stay for the community. This is really a community-based healing model. Yes, ketamine is medicine, for all the reasons that I realize I didn't get into in this. We can talk more about that. The community is really the most potent holder of medicine in this model. And I think my hope is that in what you're hearing from me speak, how I haven't actually spoken much about the ketamine itself. Ketamine does really matter. It is an effective component of a therapeutic process. It is not truly the key component in here. We hold it as sacred medicine, meaningful medicine. And again, the community really is the medicine. Realize I've been talking for quite a bit of time, so I could go a little bit further into the ketamine specific if people are curious about it, but I'll leave that to questions. Um,
Yeah.
any questions
Okay.
coming up?
Yeah, I just realized, Cheryl, there that I actually only have the chat for the panelists, so I don't know if there are some questions there in the chat for the group itself. Just realized that. But yeah, thanks for sharing so far, Todd. I'm wondering if there's any thoughts about like you spoke a lot about like obviously the group, but the idea of like there's individual ketamine assisted therapy and group therapy. Can you speak about a little bit of the maybe the difference of the two and why, you definitely spoke about why the group is really important, but maybe kind of highlight that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. In the group model, the there is the trying to look for the communitas, the shared experience, what I like to call like a expedition mentality kicks up right up front, where people can see it from day one. Oh, we're in this together in that way, and the opportunity to experience vulnerable states and be witnessed by a community of your peers seems to hold an extra level of potency as compared to the paid therapist, the person that's paid to be there. Doesn't mean there aren't benefits as well to the individual program in that way, but we really see when people have an opportunity to witness each other's journeys, normalize each other's experiences, um, the medicine just has that much more opportunity to take hold and impact people's experiences. Now, we also, what is quite common in our individual arm, is we have folks that are alumni of the community program, and some folks will say, you know what, there's this piece that has emerged, and I'm still living in shame with it, or I'm not comfortable
Mhm.
speaking to this in group. I'm not ready to be witnessed in a group format about this piece of what I'm here to work on. And my preference in this case would be for individual medicine. So it can often become as an adjunct in that way.
Yeah.
And in a very similar reason, in the reverse, is we have some folks come through ahead of time and they feel like they're not prepared to do the work in group, or they might have experiences in their life of experiencing harm in certain communities, and their preference is to go through the individual model. So if someone hasn't is not an alumni of Roots to Thrive, the model that we offer for individual ketamine assisted therapy very much mirrors the group model. Where we have 4 preparation sessions before the first medicine session, and they are offered 3 medicine sessions with integration and preparation in between all of those. When someone has come through even the individual arm and they've completed it, they are now officially an alumni, and they actually have access to our alumni program, which includes regular what we call alumni refreshers that are quite beautiful actually, where participants come through from different cohorts. So in the 12-week model, it's what we call the cohort model. We just completed our 15th cohort this afternoon, actually, technically. And so in the alumni refreshers, we have participants coming back from all different cohorts coming together for 2 preparation sessions, a medicine session together, and then a group integration session. And that is one example.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, thanks for that. Alex has a question here. Just wondering with group bunching, is it always first responders? Is there general guidelines for pairing certain populations together?
That's a good question, Alex. I'm glad you asked it. How we how the groups are formed, um, I don't know how our intake team does it. It's like magic. There's a great deal of consideration put into which folks would work well together or potentially connect together. So it's not always first responders. We've actually only run one firefighter specific cohort, and that is due to funding. And it was a beautiful experience. We want to do more of it. But typically, first responders, vets, medical providers are all in intermixed groups. We've run other specific groupings before, like we've run a men's group before, where folks were coming from all sorts of different walks of life. So often, how the aside from the regular group bunching, as you said it, which is really done through the screening process, um, there are also sometimes people on the team might feel a sense of inspiration, or we might notice a need coming through. We might notice a number of people coming through, like the men's group. We had enough men actually asking if they could work with just men that we said, you know what, we're going to do a men's group. So it's very much intuitive in that way.
Mm, great. Just about, oh, thanks. There you go. Good job. Just about ketamine itself, like who fits the criteria from your perspective, whether that's diagnosis, whether that's the type of person, what's the criteria that usually either ends up in the groups and you get to see who they are and what they're struggling with or what they're exploring, or is there an actual specific criteria for
The, the,
eligibility for you guys?
The criteria, the eligibility criteria is quite broad, actually.
Hmm.
So early on in our first few cohorts, we were looking at folks that had formal diagnosis of treatment-resistant depression, treatment-resistant anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. And we've learned that things like complex grief, and sometimes people are struggling. And part of why they're struggling is they can't name why they're struggling in that way. And they've tried all sorts of ways and other ways, and they're just not connecting with that wellness, and there's something there. And so most people that come through our doors that are interested in the service are a good fit. Because if
Mm,
someone is showing up to the point where they've reached out to explore this vulnerable idea
right.
of experiencing psychedelics, ketamine, intermuscular ketamine in a room full of strangers, they're probably ready for change and they're
Right.
probably willing to be engaged. Now, there are some circumstances where people um,
Hmm.
don't fit the criteria. So things like hypertension, recent psychosis, and certain social determinants of health are also really important to pay attention to. Are people living in a space and have the capacity to work through integration? If someone is living in an unstable housing environment, for example, it might not be the best idea for someone to come through this kind of intense experience and then return back to that kind of living experience as example. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
Gordon said, the medicine calls when it calls,
Hmm.
you know. And we really do believe ceremony starts when people pick up the phone or write that first email.
Okay. Right. Yeah, that first step, eh? Um, just about now it sounds like, and I know there's a bunch of practitioners here in this webinar tonight. Now, you guys use IM, which is the intermuscular. Is there any other way that ketamine is used in the actual group sessions or individual sessions?
In with Roots to Thrive, early days, we had a mix of the lozenges and
Hmm.
the IM. Due to bioavailability, predictability, and outcomes, we've now stuck with just IM. We don't offer IV in any way. We strictly work with IM at this point. Yeah.
Okay. And just around like outcomes, right? I mean, we always want to know like how do people do, Like I know you shared your own personal story, which I really
Yeah.
appreciate. This coming in, the group, ketamine itself, the resources, the support, the ongoing, actually, like what you guys have, this
Mhm.
ongoing alumni support too. Like, what are some of those stories around outcomes for this type of therapy that you've heard or been a part of?
Well, the stories are countless, and this is what really keeps us going.
Hmm.
When you're at a dinner party or you meet someone, you get the classic, "Oh, I don't know how you do that. I don't know." Well, this is why we're able to do what we do because we have the gift of witnessing the healing and the transformation. When we first published our outcomes, or offered our outcomes to the healthcare system post cohort one and cohort two, uh, they didn't believe us. It created that much of a tension. So we offer participants are asked to complete a range of psychological measures at entry and exit through the program. So at the 12-week point, I think we're at about, we're going to say 79 to 80% of participants that have met the criteria for PTSD no longer meet the criteria by the end of the 12 weeks. But we all know, any of us that work with PTSD, that doesn't mean that we're in the clear. It just means we don't meet this fairly arbitrary measure at any point. What we're seeing is people are their relationship to their own inner healing intelligence and their capacity, their inner resourcing has shifted. Their relationship with wellness shifts. Their relationship with their challenges shifts in a way that they're increasing their capacity to regulate, they're increasing their capacity to connect in relationships with folks that they've struggled to connect with. Um, One beautiful story that comes to mind for some reason right now is we had an RCMP member who had been off work, long-term disability due to PTSD. He'd never used a psychoactive substance in his life.
Mm.
And in his first ketamine session, he's under the weighted blanket. He's got his headphones on, his eye covers. He doesn't budge the whole time. I jokingly call this, I mean this very lightheartedly and lovingly, but I call it the ketamummy because the
Right.
majority of the experiences when folks are in this state of the ketamine, the majority of the time it's very still, it's very internal in that way. At the end of the session, this man pops up with the biggest smile on his face. He hadn't smiled for the first 4 weeks at all. And he says, "Whoa, now I get why people do that." And then this was on a Sunday. And then the following Tuesday evening, he tells us, "I told my daughters and my wife that I love them for the first time ever. And I felt it and I meant it in that way." See
Right.
that connection to self,
Yeah.
that calling to connect with others and that availability really creates like these are the healing stories that mean the most. The numbers are important, and I get
Mm.
that. But as someone that's in the rooms and in relationship with folks, it's these stories that really matter. And there are a number of stories that I can't tell outside of circles like this because people just won't believe you in
Right.
that way. So there's also this interesting kind of tempering that I feel we have a responsibility to do sometimes with these healing stories because it can really shift people's expectations. I don't want to unintentionally ever shift this expectation that psychedelic healing is a silver bullet.
Yeah.
It's more of increasing our own access to our own inner healing intelligence and capacity to move through in a world that is more from a place of inspiration and less obligation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a Gordon there. It's like self-permission, being more kind to themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But that balance, Todd, of, like what the benefits are, the stories, the beautiful healing, that the capacity of, but the also the other side of it, there's some that this medicine doesn't work with or for, that group can be really challenging, that the individual, just the readiness piece too at times, right? So it's the whole story here.
Yes. The readiness really is important.
Yeah.
Having a well-informed experience intake process, intake
Yeah.
teams, these humans that are engaging with the other human in the process
Yeah.
versus just ticking some scores and some boxes to see if they're a fit really does matter. Because sometimes people aren't ready
That's
in that
it.
way. And ideally, if someone really isn't ready, that's identified before they enter into the program.
Beautiful.
We I want to say our attendance rate is about 95 to 96%. It's rare
Mhm.
that people even miss a community of practice. It's exceedingly rare that people don't complete the 12-week program. You know, no medicine works if you don't take it.
Yeah.
And if community is the medicine, but it also speaks to the power of the container
Yeah, there you go.
in that way. And so this idea that we talk about, something that you said, I feels really important, Melanie, is this idea it doesn't work for everyone. Well, okay, I'm with you on that. And then like what does work even mean?
Ah, good point.
Like what does it mean? Does this medicine work or not? Now,
Yeah,
if you take a Tylenol and it takes your headache away, you say it works.
right.
Say it works. Now, is this work effective? Is this medicine effective for people's capacity to connect with themselves and their community?
Hmm.
in ways that hadn't seemed accessible for a long time. It's highly effective. And so one of the common stories we hear repeatedly, this is in my own story as well, is my healing, the healing rarely ends up looking like what we expected it to look like.
Right.
So I could argue my expectations weren't met
Right.
in that way.
Yeah.
Because the initial expectations weren't in line with what actually happened. And I hear that again over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Beautiful place to land. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
And again, guys, if there's any questions, we will have the panel at the other end of the webinar, and we will definitely be opening it up for questions, reflections, thoughts, kind of as the night kind of goes on. Gordon, we're going to get you to kind of start setting up there. And I realized that I didn't do the land acknowledgement for tonight too. So as you're getting set up there, Gordon, I'm gonna read the land acknowledgement just to ground us in this moment, before we jump into kind of viewing the episode itself. So yeah, so want to take this moment to acknowledge that across the land we now call Canada, we're held by territories that have been home to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples since time memorial. These lands carry stories, teachings, and relationships that long predate us and continue to live through the Indigenous communities who steward them today. As we gather tonight in this space of reflection and exploration, we pause to honor both the beauty and the complexity of this land, its strengths, its wounds, the history that shapes our present moment. We acknowledge the ongoing impacts of colonization and the resilience and the wisdom of Indigenous peoples who have always been in relationship with this land. This acknowledgement invites us just to slow down for a moment, to kind of listen, to attune to the responsibility that we hold, not only to one another, but to the land itself. May it remind us that healing is relational, that connection is sacred, and that our work here is part of a larger commitment to truth, respect, and meaningful reconciliation. So man, I skipped that, and I'm glad that it popped up back into my mind before we got moving on to Gordon. So Gordon, I'm gonna pass it over to you. Do just a brief introduction to the episode itself, and then we'll press play. And guys, as you're watching, again, just gather your thoughts, reflections, questions, and we'll get to that after. Okay.
All right. So we're going to be watching episode 1 of Advanced Force Operations. Advanced Force Operations is a classic special forces tasking where you would go into the country first or whatever area first and set the conditions, and then the larger force comes on. So it's Advanced Force Operations, and that is my intention to do that with the psychedelic landscape for the veteran community. Leverage the veteran to open the door to get everyone access, because hurt is hurt is hurt. It's all the same. A little bit of a trigger warning. It is a heavy episode, but as you can tell, I'm here right now. Other than that, I think you guys will like it. I don't think I need to say anything more. Hey guys, Gordo here. I thought I'd let you know that there are some heavy conversations surrounding war, suicide, and moral injury within this documentary. But there are also answers. And I want you to remember that we are not alone.
Rough men stand ready in the night to do violence upon those who would do you harm. That's us.
You know how many times my friend's gone to rehab, that the guy that wants to kill himself all the time? 3 times! And he's still swimming in it. But like, we can't fund this. We're just gonna keep prescribing someone drugs. No wonder people are killing themselves. Fuck! I've been circling Dr. Manuel Joano now for 3 years, sending people here. And only now we're making a documentary because we were so fed up with getting no help from the establishment. Has to be me and my brothers to go raise the money and put us in a position where I have to ask people for money. You think I want to ask people for money? Fuck.
when you're on the pointy end of the stick, when you have these critical life and death moments and you witness terrible traumas and death and injury, of course it's going to impact you. I mean, there'd be something wrong with you if it didn't impact you.
Can I go next, or?
Absolutely.
All right. Tell me who you are. Give me kind of a bio.
Oh, man. Yeah, so Gordon Hurley. I spent just shy of 15 years in the Canadian Armed Forces, half as a light infantry airborne reconnaissance patrolman, and the other half as a special operator and joint terminal attack controller.
What the fuck does that mean?
Oh, man. So a light infantry airborne reconnaissance patrolman is basically your most raw, pure form of soldier. So joint terminal attack controller is basically an air traffic controller on steroids, but you're not landing planes, you're dropping bombs.
So I am a 21-year Canadian Forces veteran. Spent 5 years in the Light Infantry Battalion in CFB Petawawa. And then I transferred to CANSOFCOM, where I worked for 14 years in a Special Missions Unit. The call to adventure was to be a part of something that was bigger than myself, something that was hopefully changing the world for good.
Pace of special forces is just, and these guys, and we want it. So you're like going up and up and up and up, and it's just piling on and on. And then, oh, suicide. I was a living example of what operator syndrome was at that moment. I had a bomb explode in my fucking face at the beginning of my career. Broke my foot, so a Les Franck injury. I had surgery on my hand, left shoulder surgery, right knee surgery, and then I ended up getting a partially detached retina. I've had elbow surgery. I've had that implant failed from, I'm pretty sure, from grinding my teeth into nothing. And then TBIs, concussions, plus all the mental health stuff. I think that's it.
What was different about my childhood from most is that I came from a broken family with a mother that was addicted to drugs. So we moved around a lot, and we had to move in with my aunt and uncle at one point, living in their basement. While I was there, I was around 8 years old. I was subject to sexual abuse by my uncle, which also shaped my psyche to make sure that doesn't happen to other people.
I'm Manuela Joanno. I'm a family physician, emergency physician of 35 years. I also have a very special interest in psychotherapy, especially as it pertains to helping military members, veterans, first responders. Back in 2014, when I lost somebody that was pretty dear soul to suicide, I started getting very curious about how can we support the mental health of our first responders. So we recognize that ketamine, which can take people out of this suicidal state very quickly, is a very powerful tool for us to have to be able to offer people. So we started giving IV ketamine at our hospital here in 2018, and it's able to take people out of a very deep, dark, depressive, even suicidal hole, sometimes within an hour. We need something like this, obviously. Psychedelics scare a lot of people. It turns them off. They're thinking about what happened with LSD back in, the late 60s and the whole Timothy Leary story. I don't think we need to be afraid, at least certainly not of ketamine. Ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic, but it does give people this psychedelic experience.
And I think that's what this is all about. You'll cry more probably in this cohort than you ever have, or maybe it's already been released. You'll laugh more than you maybe ever have. And any expedition I've done with soldiers, it's what keeps me coming back is that raw emotion that comes out when you're opening yourself up and you're vulnerable.
I came through here initially in 2020 on a cohort, the 6-day program. My relationship with my wife and my daughter was basically on its last thread. John calls me and says, "Hey buddy, we've got a program that's running this week." And I backpedaled so hard not to come. So I said, give me some time, I'll get back to you. Probably 20 minutes later, I called him and said, "Yes, sign me up." Because if not here, and if not with her, and if not with him, then when, where, and with whom would I take this step? I'll be honest, my experience was very, very dark. It was very, very traumatic for me. But that was the road I was on at that time. And that's where that road led to. You're in the right place. You're with the right people. This is the right time. And we will do our very, very best to look after you. We won't make promises, but we will look after you. You guys will be safe here. And like it was said earlier, trust is huge. It's a big ask, but trust us. Thanks, guys.
Why this program works is because we rip the Band-Aid off. We go right to the injury, and the injury is a moral injury, not just this or this. It's an injury to the soul.
I do remember when I left here, there was one little thing. We do little drawings, won't give secrets away to the cohort, but you do a drawing in the beginning of what you look like and a drawing at the end. And in a little yellow marker, because I couldn't find anything else here, on this drawing, I put a word, and it was called hope. Hold on, pain ends. And so to some, it might sound tacky, but that was what kept me going, was hope. And when things go dark, that's when we start thinking of this stuff, because you know what? We have no hope. There's no use. Why am I doing this? But if you have hope, you'll always keep going. So I encourage you all, if you're talking with anybody of your buddies and you got to get them in a place, give them that acronym. Buddy, just hold on, pain ends.
When people come here, so often you realize, wait a second, I don't even remember what it's like to feel happy. I want you to think about what makes you happy. And if you can't think about what makes you happy now, think about what do you remember in the past that used to make you happy. All right, guys, we're going to give you these. Don't take them yet. You can't heal from these injuries alone. It takes vulnerability, which is one of the scariest things.
You want to talk about drug addictions or alcohol addictions? No. Like war addiction? That's the driver within this community is like, I don't want to do this stuff for fake. Like, yeah, okay, skydiving and all that other shit's fun, but like, no. I want to take human life. I want to see other men do the most amazing things, heroic actions, sacrifice, love.
You're only as good as your last stop, so you can't stop. Operator Derek was who I was. We would have to go snatch people out of their homes, rip them away from their screaming kids, begging us not to take their father. Here's an example of what I consider a moral injury. You're sitting on top of a rooftop, watching gangs of armed combatants kill innocent women and children, but because of policies and ROEs, you are not allowed to squeeze a trigger.
Of course we're there for our government's sake, right? But when you're fighting pure evil, it's not about that anymore. It was about the civilians that are there who are being tortured to death by this evil that just can't chill out and have a beer and a barbecue on a Sunday. Instead, they would rather chop people's heads off and put it on TV. You're dropping bombs in an urban center, Mosul, 7-9 million people? Who was affected by that?
So a deployment midway into my career, we were calling in bombs on the enemy. And earlier that day, I saw a family. I saw 2 little girls and their mom go into an adjacent building. And then I saw 2 enemy combatants go into a building across the street. I helped coordinate an air stack to get a bomb dropped onto that target. Because of the approach of the aircraft, the bomb detonated the building it was supposed to, but it also had collateral damage onto the building that had the mother and the 2 girls. And I feel like that was something I had to carry. The death of those innocent people was at my hands.
How'd you feel?
Horrible. I felt absolutely horrible. Dealing with emotional pain is scarier than any firefight you're going to be in.
I want to be that person, but most days it's so fucking hard because you've got so much shit creeping in that you're just kind of coasting, hoping to get a better day where you can kind of be the person you want to be. Be the dad you want to be, whatever. You don't get that?
War is in itself kind of like a psychedelic experience. It can go to very dark places, but it can go to incredibly brotherly love places that I have rarely heard described as eloquently as warriors telling me, yeah, that form of love is almost non-existent elsewhere other than between warriors, right? And that's what we see here. In a setting like this, where you have a group-based activity, something magical happens that I can't quite describe, but there's an energy transaction which is a net positive. And most transactions between human beings end up being one wins and one loses, but rarely they both elevate. The dream states you might have with the ketamine, the stuff you have as a nightmare, right? Don't quickly come to the conclusion that it's faux. Right? Don't come to a conclusion. And that's the best advice I could give you when you go into your journey. Whatever happens, right?
For whatever reason, I'll be in the shower and I will have an argument with my wife, who's not present. And she'll say this, and then I'll say that. And then she'll say this, and then I'll say that. And then she says this, and I'm gonna say that. I'm jacked. I'm physically responding and reacting to a situation that is completely in my head. I have to break the cycle. And this is where the saying comes from. That's just not fucking helpful. So I get into this cycle in my head. I stop myself. I recognize it a little bit more quickly now. I've gotten to the point now where my wife will be down the hall or in the bedroom or whatever, and she hears me say, that's just not fucking helpful. And I'll hear her from down the hallway, and she'll say, good catch, asshole.
And we do have this philosophy in psychedelic medicine that the medicine has this amazing way of allowing the ego to step aside a little bit and allow the more vulnerable parts of you to have a spot in the driver's seat.
Just to prevent nausea. We don't want anyone being sick on us, enjoying their trip. Same thing, I don't know if you heard me, just under your tongue. It's just all just...
I really believe that you can't heal from moral injury alone. And we need other people to support us through the difficult, salient, challenging times in our lives.
The medicine is going to be working, and you can, to a certain degree, fight against it. You will diminish your experience. Let go of the wheel, relinquish control, because in reality, we're not in control of anything. Go as far as you possibly can.
And we got you.
And we've got you. We will look after you.
And as clinicians, of course, it's our responsibility to keep people safe, but it's not our role to interpret people's journeys. We can set the stage, we can give people the roadmap as much as we can, but the joke is, yeah, don't always get what you want, but you get what you need.
Yes, ma'am. The stress of the job was really what started the backslide into poor mental health and ultimately suicide. So
suicidal ideation, do it again because you didn't carry through.
Well, I had a suicide attempt.
It was so bad that I was smoking so much weed, I couldn't connect with anyone. I couldn't connect with my 2 little girls. I couldn't connect with my wife. I had zero emotion towards loving them, towards helping them.
Suicide consumed me. I would want my parachute to never open. I would want the plane I was on to crash. I wish I got killed in combat so I would have the honor of being killed in combat.
I smoked so much cannabis that I had a complete psychotic break. I could start hearing my kids screaming, and they weren't even in the house. I thought my wife was the devil.
Decided I would slit my wrist. Realized, holy fuck, that was a mistake. Put a towel on my wrist, drove myself to the hospital, lied to them, said, no, I'm special forces. I was working on kit. I was trying to put kit together. I slipped and I accidentally cut myself.
I came out as if I was going to surrender and everything was going to be all good. And then I decided I wanted to die. And I was fighting, struggling with the cops and yelling at them to kill me. And when the cops tased me, took me to the ground, and I continued to fight, I tried to go for a handcuff key that I keep in my belt, but when I looked down, I realized I was naked.
As soon as the mission would be done and we're back at like the base or whatever, I'd just be fantasizing about killing myself. The only time I felt whole was when I was doing my job. In the shacks in Petawawa, you're not allowed to have a gun in the shacks, but like, I was fucking checking my shack room. And I would sleep with a shotgun in my bed at nighttime. And I would put my mouth on it. And that would bring me solace. And then I would think like some poor fucking schmuck private would have to be scraping my brains off the walls. Another guy killed himself in the shacks. At this time, there's so much suicide in the military. There's so much suicide. And like a guy, I didn't know him, but like all my buddies knew him from the regular military. And he fucking blew his head off with a shotgun in the barracks right down the street from me. And I knew the car he drove. I knew like he had a nice, like it was a Beamer or some shit. And they didn't fucking move that car for like 3 months. And for me to drive to work every day, I fucking drove by that guy's car. Every day. Like 3 fucking months, this guy. They didn't move his car, and it was just like, I just thought, like, how many other dudes are like this, like, driving by?
The toughest battles that I've seen soldiers face, and we heard that this weekend again, is they can love their brothers and sisters to the point of throwing themselves on a grenade to save their lives. But they have the toughest battle to love themselves unconditionally. And I think that's our mission on Earth, is to learn to love ourselves as unconditionally as we love our brothers and sisters. And if the psychedelics can help be the catalyst to that, then I think we're off to the races, right?
Wow. Whole. For the first time with psychedelics, I didn't set an intention. Actually, that's a lie. My intention was to explore, was to go. I went back and I saw the pain, I saw growth. And then I asked myself, you've dealt with that. You've already dealt with that. Like, what is next? And when I went inward with it, I saw fucking Drew. And I was told that it was from him, man, like to keep going, to show the boys, like to show the warriors like this so they can go and live their lives. And I found my why. My why is to heal. And I can do that through showing it. God damn, DK, motherfucker. Oh my God, man. Can you believe it, dude? Can you fucking believe it? We did it, man. We fucking did it, dude.
Thank you so much, Gordon.
I love you,
I love you, brother. Thank you so much. You saved my life.
Oh, fuck, dude.
It was that same comfortable feeling. It was love. It was love for my brothers. Nothing. You can't put price on that.
I love you, dude.
I love you.
I don't know what more people need, even without the research. What do you mean? What do you mean? Look how much I'm crying, and all the other guys, how much they cried and what they got from it. And you're not willing to accept this as like a treatment modality. We're just going to keep prescribing someone drugs.
It gave me permission to let go of the idea of suicide, right? Because that's not a way out. That's a cheat, right? it gave me hope that things will get better, and that at one point in my life I will go back to unconditional love, to the source, and then I'll just start that cycle all over again, right? So from now on, every day is a godsend, right? When I figure out that the programming's starting to kick in, the stress is coming back, I just have to remember. I just have to remember to love myself, to slow down, to take the gas off, take the foot off the gas pedal and plug myself in to recharge myself to become whole again.
Hearing men in this profession speak so eloquently about how well this treatment worked for them, how they were able to move past things, childhood trauma, sexual childhood trauma, deep shit, man. And they had healing from it. I don't know what more you need as proof.
Knowing that there is a place like this that could help my brotherhood from killing themselves, and it's not being shouted from the rooftops, is an injustice in my mind.
If we do good, we'll send them a pension and say, take your medications and good luck, right? I don't think that's what a civil society should be doing. The social capital that person brings to society, right, is immeasurable, because it came at the biggest cost of all, right? And we send them to fight our goddamn wars in some faraway places and tell them not to come back and tell us about it. And that's just not a way to treat human beings. Plus, it doesn't make, in my mind, economic or social sense to do that. How we can keep squandering these precious resources called human beings, doesn't make any sense in my mind.
When I hear of a suicide of a military member, veteran, first responder, it is literally a knife in my heart. If only we'd had a chance with them, because we've had so many people who've had serious suicidal ideation and have been at serious risk. It doesn't scare us. We want those people to come to us because we understand the hell that is the brain of a person who's really struggling. And we want to tell them, you don't have to live like this. It does not have to be like this.
Wow. Heavy stuff, hey guys? I'm glad you made it this far. And as you can see, I'm here. And I'm doing all right. And I want you to do all right too. So if you have anything that's caught up in your life, feel free to reach out to me. There's an email in the description, and I can link you in with the professionals that can get you the help that you deserve. It's been years of people asking me what the solution is and what direction we should go, Gordo. And for years, I didn't have an answer. Now, I've been lucky enough to surround myself with some amazing individuals. And that collective as a group helped me solve a problem that I couldn't solve myself. Together, we have created something called the Veteran Accelerated Access Research Program. The VARP looks to partner Health Canada, Veterans Affairs Canada, and our provincial healthcare systems in order to deliver psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy in a health-regulated format, delivering veterans the solutions to their mental health crisis that we've been asking for years. Now we're starting in the great province of Alberta because they already have psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy baked into their healthcare system. So we can do a test pilot there, adjust, and move on to a national implementation. Woo-wee! God damn, that sounds like a lot of work. And I don't know who's going to be doing it, but probably going to be me. So I think we need to refocus, guys. The mission continues. This is a docu-series, not a documentary. I just spent last weekend filming my next hero character for the documentary. It's going to be on some female Canadian Armed Forces veterans, and I'm going to be taking them to Mexico to get Ibogaine and 5-MeO. I wouldn't have been able to do any of this without the support coming from you guys. Not only the words written to me in messages, but the monetary amounts as well. We need to keep the pace up. That means more money, more funding, more support, more messages, more sharing, more likes, more everything. Let's keep the pressure up. It's time for veterans to get the treatment that they deserve to live a rich and fulfilling life as they once thought they would while serving in the military. I love you guys all the way. Peace out.
Man.
Oh, eh?
I think that's like a good round of applause, man. That was amazing. And you're getting lots of love there in the chat. Lots of thank yous. So moving. Thanks for sharing. Super powerful. Looking forward to the next episodes. Yeah, pretty powerful stuff. There was one question there around Pete shown there at the end. Did he kill himself?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did.
He
Okay.
did. Super sad.
Yeah,
Only a
okay.
couple of years ago, too. It really rocked the community. So that's kind of a lot of it is inspired by that. That's why
Yeah.
really is the baseline behind all of this is just like, whoa, can we address suicide, please?
Yeah.
Someone. And if that means for profit, I don't care. Make it for profit. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of people saying this is a complicated issue. Oh, okay. I'm sure it's a complicated issue as we have a conversation on it with some brilliant people on the panel, and I'm sure in the chat as well. So I think the system is asleep at the wheel. And fortunately, there a lot of people, when they turn their nose up at psychedelics towards me, I just hope I bless them and say, hey, man, like, I hope you never have to be in a position to be searching for this to help whatever situation you're in, because a lot of people turn to it when they're exhausted from everything else.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the position you want to be in. So,
Yeah. What's it like sharing this, Gord? What's it like
it was
given?
strange to watch it again. I
Yeah,
watched it
okay.
at the premiere, and like the guys that wanted to get blurred out, I have to like I was so scared. I felt I was gonna throw up. Like it felt like I was gonna because I did a huge premiere, so I spoke on stage and I had a big presentation and all that stuff. But during it, I was so uncomfortable because I'm like, oh my God, what if I didn't blur it out properly or something? And it's that DK, the other main character, so he's actually helping out quite a bit now. That was only filmed in May. So, and he helps out on cohorts. He's a very smart man, so it's really good to see the change in people. And that was the thing is like just like the scores. That was one thing we did, the DSM-5 manual, right? Your scores, whatever that score sheet is. We
Yeah.
did at the beginning, then we did at the end. Obviously, drastic change.
Right.
Then we did 2 weeks, then we did 1 month, then 2 months, and it was like at 2 months people weren't feeling that outwardly like, oh my God, like that was prolific. But when they did their score sheets and like I asked permission, can I see everybody's stuff? They were like, yeah, of course. And they were still so low. It was
Yeah.
so low. And it's like just like what Todd said, it's almost the system just kind of ignores it. It's so strange. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
But no, it's I don't know. That documentary is really inspiring to myself to watch when I'm like, wow, look at those guys go. All right. It marketing. So I have a business myself, and it's just like that's the big thing is that
Mhm.
it's a great documentary, but things can be great if it's not marketed properly, then it's not going to get seen. And that's like really the focus over the Christmas break is to get all the ads going and
Yeah.
start the machine of trying to raise money. It's very challenging. So, but no, it was good. The community wants it. The money came from the community. No big organization helped me. I wrote every single politician, every single sports star, every single actor, every single famous therapist, everything. And the only person that ever got back to me was Gabor Mate's assistant, actually. Got back to me right away and was like, oh, sorry, he's not going to be able to come. And I'm like, okay. Every other person, I'm talking to hundreds of people, and that's where I'm okay with it, I guess. Like it's emboldened me quite a bit to see that, hey man, I fundraised all the money to get that guy's treatment, and then I fundraised all the money, and we're talking like I don't know, 80 grand probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I didn't get support, and to be able to stand on my own 2 feet and be like, it doesn't matter. And that's an extreme position of power where I go into all these meetings with government and all these meetings with everybody in a position of like comfort, knowing that, hey, we're doing the right thing. It's coming from the right people. The right people
Right.
are caring about it. And this is
Yeah.
a more like a legacy project than, oh, I need a big splash film premiere right now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, and there was a real theme, and then I'm going to open it up to the other guys on the panel to kind of have some reflection. But just one last thing, kind of for you, Gordo, just around vulnerability. Like a big theme of like, especially as a vet, and just the way, that system is set up and the way that, it is how you're expected to be in there, and then to come into this type of work with such vulnerability, the trust piece, obviously, and even you, like, sitting and watching kind of your story kind of up here, like, where does that, that
Hmm.
ability to access that vulnerability for the healing, hey, like what for you,
Hmm.
like personally?
I think it protects me, the
Mm,
vulnerability of it, of just being like laying it bare and just being like, yeah, go ahead, dude. Like, go ahead, judge all you want. Like,
yeah.
it doesn't matter. And it does protect me, but it also comes from a place of like, damn, I tried to kill myself. And like, I've had a lot of people kill themselves around me, and it's super sad. And it's like,
Yeah.
someone's got to do something. And it's not that people aren't doing anything, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
like, if it takes me to tell my story, then it's so worth it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah. So we're going to get to the questions in the chat just after some reflections from the panel. But Francesco, you're next up on my screen, just some reflection, some reaction to the episode and just the content that's come up so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys noticed, I'm in the film, but I'm absolutely beardless. But you might be able to recognize me by my bandana that I put on time to time when I'm in the zone for psychedelic assisted therapy. You might be able to spot me there. I just want to add on to what Gord was saying, because I was in connection with quite a few of the gentlemen who were there during psychedelic ketamine assisted therapy that we're working on.
Hmm.
And to talk to them, months after their treatment and to recognize that they've been maintaining their forms of sobriety since then. Like I'm talking months after treatment. This was back in May, and I was talking to some of the guys maybe last month, still maintaining forms of sobriety. That's a breakthrough. That's a breakthrough for a lot of these guys. We're not saying that ketamine is the magic potion here. What we're saying is maybe it's the community, the connection, the vulnerability, the therapy, the integration that comes with all of this that creates some form of holistic healing for the mind, body, and soul interconnection that we can see there. One thing to be mindful too is, what I like to tell people, the relationship we have with others is sometimes the relationship we have with ourselves. We're always cold, closed off to other people. We're probably pretty cold and close off to ourselves and suffering, right? So once these gentlemen are able to come to a point where, hey, I can open up, I can be vulnerable, I could talk about my story, that's when you know healing is starting. That's when you know healing is starting. And, reflecting back on more of the research realm of the way psychedelic assisted therapy is moving within Canada, I was just at Simper with Gord, when was it just in October, presenting some research there. And, the biggest thing we ever heard was always, oh, we don't have enough research behind it. We don't have enough research behind it. So I'm like, okay, I present them all the research we have behind it. Right? Just like, let's take a look here at Google Scholar. Okay, we found about 30 articles. Okay, how much more do you need, right? And then we move over to the next issue they bring up. Oh, there's not enough Canadian research. No. So there's always seems to be some form of tug of war that we're playing here, right? Where we have these breakthrough treatments where people are coming to us from a point of absolute I'm talking absolute desperation. These
Hmm.
people, men, women, they've tried all the antidepressants, all the antipsychotics, all the treatment modalities, anything you can imagine, and they're absolutely desperate to get help. Why are we pushing our veterans and first responders to a point where they have to get to that point? Why can't we just find some form of way to bypass that, to get them the medicine and treatment that they need, that we know research evidence and does work, right?
Yeah.
So this is a bit of, a bit of the battle we're fighting both as, psychotherapists within this huge gambit that we're within, and fighting within the research as well, right? Always focusing on advocating and showing the actual hardcore evidence that these treatments do provide for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew that was you in the video. I was wondering about that. Thanks. Justin, why don't I turn it over to you? Some reflections and some things you'd like to say kind of about ketamine itself. There you
Hey,
go.
first of all, that was a very, very moving and very powerful video. It was just looking at my own journeys through this and dealing with suicide attempts, suicidal ideation, losing colleagues to suicide, both in my previous service as a paramedic and as a firefighter. Again, it's rampant, and for a long time, nothing was done about it, or not enough was done about it. Um, and there's also there is a significant crossover between veterans and first responders. Not necessarily like, the types of dangers we face or that kind of thing, because that's very, very different. But just that sense of brotherhood and community and just being there to support each other. And that's a big part of it. And that was one thing I found when it's in my Roots to Thrive cohort, because we're all firefighters, there is that instant bond that we're all part of the same team, and it is a very team-oriented environment that we're all there for each other. I think that's also why it's important to have the funding to do those things, to have veterans groups, first responder groups, and specifically to this, so you can support each other better. And for me, like when I went through my ketamine treatments, I went through the 12-week program, and I've also done 2 refreshes since then. And each one has helped with different stages and different parts of not only PTSD, but dealing with loss and losing my dad, and dealing with divorce, and I've done a bunch of other things. So it's all played a part in all of it, and it did it. And Gordon is right. Like, the funding should be there, and we shouldn't have to be fighting for it. And even when I was dealing with WorkSafe and seeing if they would refund the program, the cost of my program, they're like, no, we don't really recognize it. There's not enough study or data. It's like, well, but you fund this other program, so that program is funded, but this is not. That doesn't make any sense. So there's I think there is a lot of research out there that it is effective and it does work. And again, it's not the magic bullet. There is a lot of work that goes into it, and there's a lot of work that you have to continue with. And it's not one shot fixes all. But it does help with a lot of different things and a lot of different aspects where you can keep moving yourself forwards to get better and better and better, and then you don't feel so trapped anymore.
Yeah. That hope, hey? I
Yes.
love that acronym. I'm gonna definitely keep that one on, hold on, pain ends.
It does. And it's and especially for just my own experience, just the difference in me between my very first session
Right.
and where I'm at now is light years. Like, there's that initial 12-week program helped a great deal in dealing with the PTSD aspect of things,
Right.
and getting me being able to process other difficulties that were going on. Like, I came home from that, and all of a sudden I'm kicked out of my house. I can't go back home.
Right.
Suddenly I'm a single dad to my son.
Right.
So I went, dealing with that and dealing with WorkSafe was a lot more stress than dealing with the divorce and separation. So going back again for another refresh helped deal with that part of it.
Yeah.
And then when my dad was sick and I knew we didn't have long left, going for another refresh helped me deal with that part of it.
Yeah.
And even this past summer even though that did help a great deal, there were still lots of things that I was struggling with, and with not being healthy, overeating, drinking too much, not being consistent with my fitness training and jiu-jitsu training. So this past refresh that I did was extremely helpful.
Yeah.
I had I had a rough couple of weeks when I came home and right after it because I was able to bring some of my dad's ashes home, and for 2 weeks I couldn't even look at it. I
Yeah.
wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't want to put it in a little box that I got him. And
Mm.
then I woke up one day and it's like something clicked and the light switch turned on.
Right.
And it was like I don't need to keep doing what I was doing because it wasn't helping.
Got
I
it.
wasn't being healthy. I was,
Right.
not drinking every day, but drinking to excess too many days of the week
Right.
and not taking care of myself, eating too much junk food.
Right.
Um, so just being able to flick a switch to saying, no, I'm not doing that anymore.
Oh.
And going into complete 180 lifestyle change in getting back into the gym, getting back into regular training, eating much better, zero alcohol whatsoever in the last, well, month and a bit now.
Oh.
And it's amazing how that works, and it works over time. It's not just an instant
Oh.
fix, but
Right.
the effects keep going,
Yeah.
and as you go further and further, like there you get more and more insights,
Right.
and more and more insights as to what different things mean, because
Mm-hmm.
what you're seeing in your mind when you're going through it sometimes can be very fuzzy or doesn't make a lot of sense, but
Right.
later on, you're going through life and something will just click and it's like, ah, well, that makes a lot of
Mm.
sense as to
Right.
what this was. So yeah, so it's been for me very enlightening, and knowing that um, as I continue through life, and even if there's going to be struggles, I feel a lot better equipped to handle
Right.
things.
Right.
And that's one thing I can always go back to if I need, another refresh to just kind of keep myself on track to where I'm supposed to be.
Okay. Really speaks to the process of this, hey?
It is. It's a very big process, and you have to
Yeah.
be open to that process
Right.
and open to just opening your mind to everything else that's going on, because
Right.
it's not just that 2 hours that you're in the medicine.
You got it.
It's weeks and months afterwards
Yeah.
that stuff still comes to light and helps
Yeah.
you um, deal with a lot of the uncertainties that life just throws at you, especially when it's all at once.
Right.
It's if I described it once as being stuck in a hurricane because you're dealing with, being losing a job that you loved.
Right.
I was in emergency services my whole career
Right.
and not being able to do that anymore, then
Yeah.
going into a different post-retirement job that you thought was going to work and still in public safety, and then that went sideways and that can't do that anymore.
Right.
So you lose your whole identity.
You're right. Yeah. So that rebuilding, eh? That process.
Yes, it
Hey.
is. And especially like when life just piles problems one on top of another,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
just helps just kind of break them down and just deal with things as you go, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. And you being part of the Roots to Thrive, like the cohort, the group, what was that community piece kind of like for you along the way?
That was really good. I still keep in touch with the people in my cohort.
Right.
That's one thing, if I'm having a bad day, that
Hmm.
I could reach out and text any one of them without a
Got it.
problem and we could
Yeah.
chat.
Right.
There's a few of us in the same cohort did a refresh last year, which was great.
Hmm.
So then we got to see everybody again, and
Right.
which is really good. But the community of part of it was huge, and
Right.
I can't stress that enough. Like that whole um, 8 or 9 weeks it was before you even touched the medicine was
Yeah.
very, very important. And just
Right.
getting to know each other, getting to understand what we're all doing there, what's expected, and just
Right.
understanding what your body is doing, what your body's telling you.
Right.
And even the other refresh I've done where it's with a completely different group, um, again, is even though it was a mixed group, just that community aspect you get, and just being able to talk to people, even
Yeah.
though you're only talking to a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Um, I think that because you're such a small, tight-knit group, it really allows you to open up and share quite freely
Mhm.
without
Yeah.
worrying about being judged or
Yeah.
being shamed or anything like that. So
Yeah.
that part of it is really, really big and really important.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Justin. Todd, I'll throw it to you for the last reflection, and then we're going to open it up. to the group for
Well,
questions. We have a bunch there waiting. So
okay, good. Thank you. Thank you so much. There it is. Like, Justin, you keep showing up and you're showing up, for yourself and your community and us. Like, it's just a beautiful example right now, right here in real time of it. And Gordo, like, really want to honor your generosity and thank you for showing it and doing the work that you're doing. It really, really matters. There's been this talk about words shared tonight about this idea of vulnerability and and there are different types of vulnerability.
mm,
That just is what it is. When we start to pay attention to that, we can see it in different ways. And what I'm seeing in both these men on the screen here that is distinct and really, I think, important, it's chin up, chest out vulnerability, where you can be vulnerable and own it with your head up in a way that it props you up and builds you up in that way. And that there's a momentum to that that's really important. Like, and this healing is very much about when we're working with psychedelic assisted therapy and very intentional models and stuff. This isn't about, obviously, like we've mentioned, instant change, but about creating momentum towards a preferred path. And not only a type of momentum that we can build our strength and our capacity to maintain and control. So I use a lot of meathead analogies. So any of you that are familiar with swinging kettlebells that you've ever tried, you got to work your way up to bigger kettlebells. You got to work your way up to bigger swings. But over time, you can develop this strength where you actually have agency over the momentum, and that momentum in and of itself is creating that strength to move through for the momentum. And in this medicine work and these journeys, especially in community, where you're seen, witnessed, you're spotted, so to speak, it can really shift that momentum in a good way, even when it slows down and we're not feeling it. That momentum's still there. It's got a different cadence to it, a different pace to it. So something else that the film really reminded me of that I feel like is really valuable to speak to, a learning I want to share is a context of like cultural safety and cultural humility. It's typically privileged right now in Canada for good reason about Indigenous ways of knowing, Indigenous cultural safety and cultural humility. And I think we can learn a lot from those processes and that framing, but cultural safety and cultural humility isn't just about race or religion. It's about the cultures that have shaped us and changed us that we are a part of. And to be able, so when I was in that circle with those firefighters working with those folks, like it wasn't just us welcoming them into the culture of Roots to Thrive. Like they welcomed me into the culture of firefighters and their culture and the point pieces of the culture they want to carry forward that they want to lean in on really help continue that momentum. And I saw that in the film, Gordo. Like you are doing the healing not within this context of culture where people are going to understand it in certain places and you feel safe to just be as you are in that culture, which is also connected to a barrier that I often see and I hear from a lot of participants, a lot of my clients that have tried multiple psychotherapies and talk therapies and other forms of healing, is that the language we get trained to use and the ways that we are trained to show up as therapists isn't often inclusive to certain cultures. It's actually can be, we don't even know we're doing it. The language we're using, even the way we're dressed, our setting, our space can be really isolating to folks that come from more, blue collar fields, more of those kinds of fields and don't really feel like they have a place where they fit. Like, do I really belong here? Like those questions really start to show up. So the subtleties there start to come into who are the facilitators? Who's the team? Do the teams understand this? Can you bring people in and build this team in a way that is going to be able to honor those things and acknowledge them in a way and then leverage it in, which is why it is so, I hope as this field emerges and grows, we have more folks with lived experience that are able to find pathways through to be part of that formalized healing process and facilitating and guiding it you know like as therapists, one of our main jobs is to get ourselves out of a job. Like it's a really terrible business model, really, when we think about it. The more effective we are,
Right.
the less people are going to continue to come back. And like, good. And ultimately, I see a future where we have more peer-led psychedelic
Yeah.
assisted therapy groups in these specialized areas that really matter in that way.
Mm.
And this all this work, I hear the struggle, Gordo, around those closed doors.
Yeah.
You know, I hear the struggle, Justin, about the getting shut down, about the finances from WorkSafe all the time. And the fact is what we're doing works. Like it matters. And
Hmm.
if we're moving from a place, and I need to hang on to this every day for a number of reasons, because the amount of times when I've just been like, what am I doing? Like, why are we even bothering anymore? Like one of our firefighters said to me recently, it's like, we're just keep bashing your head into the wall. Eventually you'll break through. And it does feel like that sometimes, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but the reality is when we're moving from this place of like we believe and we know this to be true and effective, like we're actually moving from a place of purpose and calling.
Right.
And that's got a momentum to it. And so I don't want to put words into your mouth, Gordo, in here. Okay. I'm going to share something I saw. And if I'm wrong, you just tell me like kick rocks. You got it wrong. But what I'm hearing in the stories of all first responders and soldiers, and you heard it in that documentary where there was purpose and calling in that role, there was purpose and calling in that place, in that job, in that identity. And purpose and calling is a core resiliency factor of our mental health. So as that purpose and calling starts to diminish, it's a little bit less to hang on to. And what I see in Gordo now is that your energy behind purpose and calling is well, it's why you're here today. It's a key factor in there.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of the, I think it's one of the most important things. When interact with veterans and they're suicidal, that's generally my first question is like, okay, like what's the big goal here in life? And they're just like, whoa, 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 what do you mean? Like, oh, I'm trying to deal with this. And it's like, right, but if you don't have a goal or something to get to that stretch, then you're just going to be sitting in this. So you're absolutely right. And that's why it was weird to say that thing in the movie too, where I'm like, ooh, where I said I didn't have intention. I had a lot of intentions, but it was just different the way my trip started. And like I said, it got heavy and weird, but I'm like, I've dealt with this. I've done a lot of psychotherapy. I've done other psychedelics. And I finally truly let myself go to be like, hey, man, like you came here to figure out more of your why. And then when I
Mm.
said I heard Drew or I saw Drew, like that guy, he died in Iraq in 2017
Mm.
and or 2015, sorry. And I take care of his parents on Remembrance Day, and everybody loves this guy. And like, yeah, very. I heard his voice. His voice told me, "Hey, bring this to the community. Like, show the guys. Let them see that they don't have to kill themselves. They don't have to have poor mental health. They can do it." And very strange. It wasn't his voice. I didn't see him exactly, but it was him. Like, for
Yeah.
sure, it was him.
Hmm. Yeah, that purpose and meaning, eh?
Yeah, I believe you when you say like that was him,
Yeah.
like 100% believe you. And just one more thing, and then we'll open it up if that's okay.
Yeah, totally.
Because of the nature of why we're here and we're gathered, and this is about ketamine assisted therapy and first
Right.
responders and soldiers, vets. There is another common thread. It was touched on in the documentary, and it doesn't get talked about a whole lot explicitly, and I'm going to name it really clearly. So when people have been working in these high stress, high energy environments, and
Hmm.
they get exposed to so much and experience so much, for good reason, the assumption is that we're coming in to work on these index traumas, these experiences that happen in the line of duty and service. Absolutely, that makes sense. The overwhelming majority of people that I work with in this work go, and here's this other stuff from before. So now what?
Hmm.
That's constant.
Yeah.
We need to be ready for that without assuming that, which is a bit of a catch.
Right. Yeah. Really good point of that, like what's kind of under the iceberg, hey? Like it's like coming PTSD, workplace kind of violence, like trauma, whether it's first responder, whether it's vet, then there's the burnout, there's the suicidal ideation, there's the crisis, and then, you get to a place of, some calm, or some healing, and then it's the underneath, like what's waiting there underneath, right? And that's where that courage kind of kicks in too, hey, like it's big work, right? And that's yeah, it's a really good point. Okay, so yeah, we have about 15 minutes left. Thanks for all the reflection and insights, guys. Maybe we could get at these few questions that we have, and if anybody has anything else that's burning, just put it into the chat. I guess I'll throw this one to you, Francesco, and I can jump in and support if need be. But if this is from Alex, if we as therapists in Ontario want to do this type of work in our private practice, what pathways are there to do this? So I'll throw it over to you, and then I can
Yeah.
jump in if need be.
I think that's a very multi-layered question. Like it's simple, but it's still quite multi-layered in and of itself, right? I mean, there's a lot of organizations where we call them ketamine clinics that are available within Ontario. And, to bring ketamine to your own private practice, there's a couple of legalities and things that need to be in place, such as having the right professional psychiatric care, nurses, and everything else that comes with it. So it can get quite expensive. But the route that I find most practitioners in Ontario are moving in towards right now is finding these ketamine clinics, going with their patients or their clients to these ketamine clinics, having the experience with them, and then coming back to their private practice almost as a co-op based program. It's kind of the model that I've been noticing. I don't know if what you've been noticing this might be a bit different, Melanie, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's especially when you're in private practice, you want to do the work with your own client, that many of these clinics are okay with, a therapist kind of being present during the session itself. It's just cost prohibitive. Like it can get quite expensive. There are a couple of clinics where they have, set up kind of where you, as a therapist and the client, can have access to a nurse practitioner, a doctor, and support. There's a couple of clinics, that are available like that. And so you can go in and they're set up to like actually be really supportive for that therapeutic experience. I do know a couple of practitioners that are coming together with like a bit of a community of care where, it's a practitioner that owns a clinic that gets access to a nurse practitioner or a doctor who's going to work with the clinic. So then they have access to, the ketamine assisted therapy in their own practice, but they find, a doctor and a nurse practitioner to work alongside them. But that's kind of it. And I think there's some real space, especially in Ontario to learn from, like a Roots to Thrive out there, what you guys are doing. We just don't have that here in Ontario. So there's a real, a need for it. So we definitely have talked to you guys at Roots to Thrive to come out and train a bunch of us out here. That's kind of in the works. So I think it's we have lots of space and opportunity here in Ontario. Adrian, I heard you talk about other medicines utilized. How do you know which medicine to use and when? And do you feel ketamine is best for PTSD? So impressive, Gordon.
That's one definitely more clinician. Like, just know if you ask me a question like that, you're getting a Gordo answer. So this is my personal belief. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I think there's a little bit of a scale to it, as well as what is the person's background in trauma specifically, and what is their, I would say, resilience. I think you could like not necessarily break someone, as that's a bad sound. I think certain psychedelics require to shake the tree. And sometimes people with very high resilience will need a more powerful psychedelic. So that's kind of my interpretation of it. I find uh, some some ketamine, what I've this is all observational because I have all my buddies do the peer support, like what Todd was saying. They go back if they do ketamine, they go back to the Project Trauma support, and then they become peer mentors and they help lead or be the buddy system to it. And sometimes some of these guys are white knuckling it through their ketamine, and it's not enough, and they come out the other side. And they find they're like, oh, like okay, yeah, like that was terrible. What happened? And it's they were never able to let go. So in certain cases, I champion Ibogaine quite a bit because you're not really gonna have a choice, and I think that it is the most powerful psychedelic for a reason. And with some people, I think they need to be held and told to sit down, and that medicine, I've seen it do that. So, but I think you can get that with all of them. It just depends on the dosing and maybe the setting and the protocol. There's so many variables. Sorry for not a good answer.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Todd, maybe
I
you're,
think I think it was a really good answer and it was an important
yeah.
answer in there because really, especially speaking to that point, if someone's just white knuckling through it, they're likely going to have less of an explicit impact. Ketamine is an amazing drug for neuroplasticity. Just because we can't see it working, though, doesn't mean it's not working in that way. So I'll speak to the different medicines, but first I want to name like the protocols can really matter. So preparation, set and setting, and also how many sessions are you having? So what we find when we have three medicine sessions, three ketamine sessions, I really encourage folks to consider the first medicine session as like a first date with the ceremony and with the medicine. It's really preparation for the second and third and future sessions. And so that can kind of change the expectation, shift it somewhat, and really help people prepare to what does it even mean to let go? Like we tell people, we want to encourage you to be open to what the medicine is ready to show you, but what does that even mean? Like so much jargon in our field for good reason, right? We're in these echo chambers. It makes sense. So and also with ketamine, especially IM ketamine, because of the predictable length of the journey is somewhat contained, the rebound effects being quite minimal, the after effects in that way. I lightheartedly like to call it for both a treatment modality and a training modality to train folks to work with the medicine. I kind of call it the training wheels of psychedelics in that way because there's these set boundaries that can become quite predictable. And so like treating PTSD is on it's on a spectrum. No two experiences of PTSD are the same and where someone is in that journey. And so this is where MDMA comes in particular. So for obvious reasons, MAP has published a great deal of data around their clinical trials, some really promising data in there. And what we see in working with MDMA, it's exceptionally effective and helpful when someone is identifying an index trauma specifically. Doesn't mean there aren't other things there, but when someone is clearly identifying this one experience that just is haunting them, coming through their minds, jacking their nervous systems when they hear this one sound, smell this one smell, it's this one dream that keeps coming up. MDMA is a fantastic way of being able to spend time with that story because it is a much more relational experience and open-hearted experience in that way. But as a practitioner, you also got to check yourself and get ready because this is an 8-hour talk therapy session. You know, teams matter and the support teams really matter. What happens when and if, and I've seen this several times where we have this identified reason we're going in. This is the experience. I worked with a woman who survived some bombing in Iran as a young girl. We're about 2 hours into the session and she's like, I'm good. Like, good. Like, I'm feeling relieved. Oh, okay. We got another 6 hours. What's next? Right. Like so as far as that, it's still, again, highly effective for some people, some of the time. Ibogaine, again, highly effective. So all these medicines can be really helpful. Setting, protocol, the team that's supporting, those are probably actually the bigger questions when we go, let's say we want to treat PTSD. We want to ask less about the medicine, but what's the protocol? What's the team? What's the set and setting that's going to suit this community, these people the best?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that, Todd. Francesco, any thoughts on
Yeah, there's a couple thoughts going through my mind on this one for sure. Thanks for that, Todd. That was actually really well explained. I think the biggest thing too is just when we're working with any form of medicine to recognize the difference between our expectations and our intentions with it, right? Learning that sometimes when we form expectations, that itself can take away from the experience and rather to form an open understanding of the medicine. There's one quote that I usually always tell my own clients before we're entering some form of psychedelic therapy-based session, and it's please be gentle, please be kind, and show me your world so I can better see mine. That way, it lets go of any form of ego associated with the experience itself. But that's just one part of the puzzle we're working with. I find more so within the research community, there's four things we're looking at right now. We're looking at obviously ketamine, right? But we're looking at MDMA, psilocybin, and ibogaine. Those are kind of the ones in the spotlight for us right now. What we've been noticing is there's potentially some efficacy for different psychedelics for different circumstances and forms of trauma, and many different forms of complex traumas, moral injuries, operational stress syndrome, TBIs, everything that might come with that. For example, with MDMA, we might find that's better for trauma connected to forms of emotional suppression, shame, interpersonal forms of injury. It's more of a psychedelic what reconnects people with parts of themselves that the trauma taught them to exile from within. When it comes to ketamine, right, this is really great for treatment-resistant PTSD, depression, heavy trauma, traumatic burnout, especially in first responders or veterans. But we usually see this best for chronic entrenched or shutdown-based trauma. That that stereotypical, I feel stuck, I feel frozen, I can't move, right? Kind of the free states of disassociation, maybe. But ketamine creates an opening when someone feels psychologically a good word for this, maybe psychologically gridlocked, if we can, right? Now, our other one we're looking at is also psilocybin. Psilocybin is an interesting one as well, where it's, great for moral injury and meaning making, right? Especially grief-related trauma, combat existential conflict within, because what it offers, comparative to different psychedelics on more of a higher scale, especially using meaningful experiences questionnaires. So we notice psilocybin might be better for meaning making, spiritual trauma, and existential forms of injury, right? So psilocybin changes the relationship to the story, but not just the symptoms. And I guess our fourth one there was ibogaine, right? From a research standpoint, what we find right now, especially the things going down in Texas with all the research happening around ibogaine, is a lot of it has to do with helping individuals with trauma entangled, perhaps with forms of addiction or compulsion, right? It's been great for opioid-based addictions and trauma that includes addiction-based compulsions as well within it. So ibogaine, it gives maybe exposes the full pattern of trauma-related behavior over many, many years of treatment-resistant states. And that's how we're kind of viewing it right now. Now, mind you, maybe research may shift over time, but these are the conceptualizations of these psychedelics and what they could may specifically be used for in different circumstances. However, without a doubt, I can't stress it enough, harm reduction, right? Ensuring somebody's capable to take these medicines, right? Forms of diagnoses within their path, what they're working towards. But in addition to that, ensuring there is integration no matter what, whenever we take any form of psychedelic. And I can't emphasize enough about what we talked here today, just focusing on the community aspect of integration. Without a doubt, it looks like a Roots to Thrive as well. There is the buddy system, right? You're with people from your same cohort, from where you've been, who say have similar stories as you. And same thing within the video from Gord. All these things are little but massive when it comes to outcome.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Francesco. We just have a few minutes left, and I'm going to read Barb's comment here, and it really kind of fits well with the last question I'm going to ask the panel to kind of close us off tonight. Thank you, Gordon. It is your and other stories who will hopefully push our system to finally endorse and financially support what we know here to be true. As an MD who's also talked to politicians, etc., privately, they are all supportive, and then in public, they just seem to go numb. But the people power can and does change things. And so thank you, and you and all the others for your service. So this really kind of lends to the last question. What's your hope for psychedelic assisted therapy? Ketamine, we've been talking about tonight, and what's your hope? What do you hope for the future? We've talked a lot about what ketamine is, what ketamine therapy is, what personal experiences there have been, professional experiences, therapeutic opportunities, prep, the dosing itself, integration, community, vulnerability, love we haven't talked about, but it's come up a lot too, the brotherhood piece. Um, what is it that you hope for kind of moving forward from, what we're doing now and what you want for the future? Justin, we'll start with you, and then I'm gonna work down the panel here to close us off for the night.
Um, so for the future, um,
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that this really gets accepted as mainstream treatment.
Mm.
That that whole what's the word I'm thinking of? I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, sometimes my mind goes different places. Um,
Right.
the whole stigma of psychedelics,
Yeah.
where and even watching like the documentary I was in, how back in the 50s and 60s there was a lot of research, and then the government clamped down on everything, said no, it's all bad, it's all illegal, and then it kind of went away for a while. So I'm
Hmm.
really hopeful that the more and more we do this, and the more and more we participate and share it, um, and do these documentaries and docu-series that like Gordon is doing, just to get it out there that yes, this is here. We understand how it works. We know that it does work,
Yeah.
and because there's so many more people out there that would be a huge benefit. And right
Hmm.
now, it seems one of the big barriers is cost,
Yeah.
because it's not funded. So there's a lot of people that would definitely benefit from this and make their lives so much better,
Hmm.
or in the extreme case, save people from suicide. So the
Yeah.
more it's out there and the more mainstream it is and the more it's accepted, then the stigma goes away and it's become, no, this is a commonly accepted treatment and it's going to benefit so many more people.
Yeah.
Um, Even just the people I know in the fire service and emergency services, and there's a lot of people that I know would benefit from it, but they just can't do it. They don't have the time or the money to do it. So that's my hope in the future, is that the more this gets out, the more research is done, then it's concrete evidence that yes, this is legit, this works.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to go to Todd and then Gordon. In the meantime, could you put the information about how people can support kind of your fundraising? There's just a question in the chat there about how to support you. So if you want to put that information in, and we'll get to just a couple of seconds here each, guys, if we
Yeah,
could. Todd, go
really
ahead.
quick, increased access. That's
Yeah.
my hope for the future. Increased access with
Yeah.
meaningful, aligned training and education programs that provide mentorship, journeyman type opportunities, and that kind of thing. And my preference would be that the increased access is actually out of the hands of the mainstream healthcare system that continually opposes certain practices. To be truly holistic, I think we need to look at other ways of increasing access through nonprofit models, etc.
Beautiful. Okay. Francesco.
My ultimate goal for psychoassisted therapy is to, I think we mentioned this at one point during our webinar here. Todd mentioned that our goal as therapists is to one day go out of business, right?
Mhm.
And to actualize that to a degree where one day people can have that form of healing where we don't need to go to them anymore, and the healing can be spread out between people and beyond.
All right. Um, Cheryl, if you could put Gordon's information in the chat for everyone. It looks like it just went to the hosts. That would be great. And also Justin's documentary that he's been Quiet the Sirens, which if you could put those in, that would be awesome. Okay, Gordon, you have the last word, my friend. What do you
Yeah,
want the future to look like?
man, I think we have complete control over this and we have a lot of say, and I think we have a lot more than we give ourselves credit for. And I think it's time. I think the history will look back on the people that are lagging behind unfavorably compared to the people that were leaning forward into this. So I think a year from now it's gonna be quite different, the landscape. And if not, it's sure as heck's gonna be a lot louder. But I don't know if it's smart to have this much optimism, but I feel I feel pretty confident on the mission that we're on right now. So,
Yeah.
and it's time to rally the troops. And there's enough, just like what Barb said in the chat. They do want it behind closed doors. So it's just like, okay, time to be an adult, everybody. Can we try that for a second and put our pants on? Like, let's go here. And unfortunately, if that means people calling out from the public, that's what we'll do. That's what they're supposed to work for us. So I think we have a lot more say than we think. So the future, I think, is going to be very bright when it comes to psychedelics.
Beautiful. Okay, what a beautiful way to end, guys. Thanks so much, the panel, for being here. Francesco, Todd, Gordon. We Justin there too. We are really thankful, and like what a privilege to sit and just kind of listen to all those stuff you guys are doing and how you're making this happen. Lots of links there in the chat to connect with Gordon and his work. And the amazing, actually, I did get a chance to see this one, the amazing the movie that Justin's in, Quiet the Sirens, definitely worth taking a look at. Thanks so much for coming tonight, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks so much.